This is Taking the Lead, a podcast for B2B tech professionals, leaders, and executives who want to learn from female icons in the tech industry. In each episode, host Christina Brady interviews women who are driving revenue for some of the most respected tech companies in the world. Are you ready to get inspired?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Taking the Lead. I'm Christina Brady. I am the Chief Strategy Officer of Sales Assembly. If you don't know who Sales Assembly is, we are the go-to market resource for all scaling B2B tech companies. We lean in and help to be crucial support for you in all areas, including training, enablement, advisory, strategy, and of course, infrastructure and people building at the same time. If you want to learn more about Sales Assembly, come visit us at salesassembly.com. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this very show, Taking the Lead, is now a part of Motion's network of B2B marketing shows. If you have not heard of Motion Podcasting, they are an incredible company that lives within the space, and they help to build shows. They create all of the assets. They do blog posting. They do editing. And if you are looking to kick off your own show, be sure to check out motion.io. And with that, I am very excited to welcome my incredible guest of the day, Jennifer Ives. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. My gosh, this is such a moment. This is a dream. Thank you.
Oh, yay. You know, making even itty bitty dreams come true is kind of why we all get out of bed in the morning, right? Can we just do one thing, make one person smile, and then we can be satisfied?
Exactly.
I'm looking through your incredible history, and I know that like most women in tech, so many things are always in transition. So tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, and where you kind of got where you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a great question. Thank you. So I actually started out as an engineer, a geospatial engineer. I was on the engineering team at a fast growing company early in my career. And it was, I always laugh that this person played such a pivotal role in my career because he couldn't really have cared less about the rest of my career. Not that he was a bad person or had any ill intent, but he was running a fast growing business. And I was, a year two engineer. He asked me to, this was our CEO, and he asked me to attend a meeting with a client today. It's called a sales engineer or a sales architect, and they're quite common. But when I was starting out in my professional career over 20 years ago, it wasn't called anything. And it was really interesting to have an engineer or a product designer come with the business development team or the CEO or whomever to what we would call a sales meeting. So we were meeting with one of our clients that we were having a little bit of a difficulty figuring out exactly what the challenge was that we were going to be solving for them. So they asked me to come because I had been working on the digital product. And I stepped into this meeting and just found myself. It requires curiosity. I started asking questions. I was able to talk a little bit more about the technology and the product that we were building. I was able to really understand, maybe because I understood the technology in a way, I was kind of knee deep in it. But I was able to ask them some questions and really fill the hour with listening to them and asking them good questions. What I realized is that is what sales is. Everyone is in sales, no matter what your title is. You're asking good questions. You're trying to solve challenges for other people. And it was from that moment on that I kind of straddled between the engineering team and what I came to know, and the team I came to also know very well was the business development and the sales team. And started going on some meetings with them and really started understanding what sales was all about. I'm a big proponent, and lots of people hear me say this. If a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? I feel the same way about amazing technology and amazing product, that it can be out there in the market. But if no one knows about it, if there's not a sales team and an incredible marketing team and what I call a commercial team to talk about that product, to talk about that technology and really introduce it to those who have a headache, have a pain that needs to be solved, then you can have the best technology or product in the world, but it really doesn't matter. So I started out on the engineering team, moved over to the commercial side of technology companies, and have enjoyed a pretty amazing and really interesting career ever since. I talk about oftentimes don't put blinders on because you want to make strategic decisions in between those moves. And with each company that I've been part of, it helped lead and led marketing and sales and commercial and public affairs. And again, that piece of the company that is sharing the technology and the product and how they are solving problems or challenges in the world. I've been on that side of the business of technology companies, analytics, data companies for many, many years. And I was most recently with an incredible software development company, 3-Pillar Global. I led sales, I led P&L for them, and I also was the global head of strategic partners, working very, very closely with private equity firms who have many, many companies in their portfolios that are focused on digital product and putting digital out into the market. And so, and I advise companies, and I also sit on boards. So that's a little bit about me and my journey from engineer to the commercial side of the house, and now leading companies and advising and sitting on boards.
I mean, that's such a comprehensive journey that you've been through. Did you proactively identify that you wanted to move throughout the company that way, or did it just kind of happen? I think a lot of, especially women, are always wondering, like, when we see incredible career journeys like yours, is how did that happen? And how did she move there? Did somebody tap her? Did she decide to? What went on there?
Yeah, that's another really great question, because in each one, so it's been a little bit of both. I'd say it's been kind of 50-50. I had a curiosity. When I was in these business development meetings early on in my career, I had a curiosity as to what role does marketing play in this? And where are we from a public affairs perspective? And where are we? What role is the sales team playing in this as they tap into the engineering team, as we tap into the clients or to the market that we're trying to continue, grow and succeed in? So a little bit, half of it was probably my own curiosity. I will say many times throughout my career, there has been someone else who has tapped me on the shoulder to say, I see this in you, and you would be really good at this. And it was almost at the same time that I was thinking that same thing. But to go, again, I don't know that really many people think about going from sales to marketing or into public affairs or kind of touching on these different pieces of the business. Now that I look back on it, it is incredibly natural to do all of those things on the commercial side of the business. And actually, it makes you so much better at what you do to have all of these different experiences. So I had a little bit of that in me. And it did take someone to tap me on my shoulder, literally and figuratively, and say, you can do this. I see this position available. Why aren't you applying for it? You'd be brilliant at this. And me saying, you think so? I don't know. So it's such a great question, Christina, because it was a little bit of both. And clearly, if I had, could turn back time, I wish it wouldn't have taken someone each time to tap me on the shoulder. And at the same time, I'm really grateful. And that's why I mentor so actively, because it really does many times take someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, why have you thought about this? You would be so good. What are you thinking about as your next step? What do you want to do? How would you like to help this company or another company? What does your career look like? You'd be excellent at this. Why haven't you, what is it that is keeping you from thinking that you could do that job, or from having it kind of, run across your brain to look into that piece of the business and grow your experience in those ways. So it's a little bit of both, a little bit of my own curiosity, and then also some really amazing mentors and people in my career who they probably don't know that they had such an impact, and that they did. They tapped me on the shoulder and said, why not? This you'd be amazing at this role.
I mean, I love that you touched on curiosity, because I talk about that being one of the most critical tools that anybody has, is just your own professional curiosity and bravery to even fail forward if that's what it takes. And I know we have an awesome topic for today. We're going to get to it, but then you keep saying interesting things that make me want to ask you more. And one of them is, I know a lot of folks, especially as I've kind of worked through tech over the last decade plus, is there's always that I'm working in this one department of this company, but that I see this other really cool thing, or this other department, or maybe I want to try that. And the biggest fear that I hear is, but if I switch departments, I have to start all over again. Like, you hear that a lot, right? Like, oh, I'm in sales, and if I want to go to product marketing, or if I want to go to client success, I have to start all over again. So it feels like making a change comes with this required take a step back. And in your experience, is there a validity to that? Like, did you have to continue to take a step back to move where you wanted to go? Or is that just kind of head trash?
I thought I knew exactly how I wanted to answer this question. And then I gave it another 2 beats. And I will tell you that sometimes you do need to take a step back, and you should be highly strategic about it. I don't recommend it as an exact path that everyone follow, that every time you think about doing something new, you think to yourself, well, I should really start two levels below where don't do that to yourself. Think about it strategically. If it is a new way, I did do that. I took a step back once in my career. It was highly strategic. And the next job I had, I jumped 2 steps. So it was very, very strategic. And I could almost see, I'm going to do this for two-ish years, right? I thought that's about how long that particular role would probably need my skills and talents. And then I knew where I wanted to be. So I did it highly strategically. So when I answer the question, if you take a step back, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not because you're afraid, not because you're doubting yourself, not because you don't think you're good enough, but because you think, oh, I really need to learn this piece of it in order to get forward. As I mentioned, I jumped 2 steps. As I took 1 step back, when that role was done, I took 2 steps forward and became a senior vice president. So I recommend being very strategic and having an honest conversation with yourself before you ever take a step back or even a lateral move. Really talk with yourself, understand why you're doing it, and be very honest with yourself about that why. Sometimes talking with a mentor is an excellent way to crystallize the why before you take a different job. You do not always have to take a step back or even take a lateral move to move into a different piece of that company. You have so much information. You have so much knowledge. And in sales, you're at the tip of the spear. So when you go into product marketing or you go into a different piece of the business, you need to give yourself credit for all of the information that you have as a sales leader in that company. You understand the back end. You understand the front end. You understand the customer journey from the very beginning through when they first onboard to where they are today. You have so much knowledge that you may not be giving yourself enough credit for. And again, I believe that's where the mentor can come in, or mentors, plural, can come in and highlight that for you, because sometimes you do need that highlighted a little bit for you. You're a little bit too much in the forest.
Yeah. I mean, and that advice too, as I'm listening to you kind of talk through these really deliberate steps forward and back, it's almost like you become a more worldly and a more knowledgeable professional, even if you wind up with these steps back, right? It's like, I don't mean to oversimplify, but it's like a focused and deliberate step back is also kind of a step forward, because you're learning a skill set that you don't have. You have to take a moment to learn that, but then once you learn it, you have it forever, right? When you take on that role, you have that experience with you forever, and it will serve you in the next seat. So
exactly. And women in particular, men don't have as difficult of a time kind of seeing the step back and moving 2 steps forward. Don't allow, if you do a lateral or you take 1 step back, like you said, to learn maybe a new skill or a new talent, don't allow that to hold you back from where you believe you should be in your career. It is very important for women to claim where they are in their career, to claim their role and their title and step into that power. So that is one thing that I would add in there for women in particular.
Claiming where you are in your career, the idea of that stepping you into your power, I think it feels like putting some control. And that's kind of what we want, is we want to feel like we are not a victim to our careers and circumstance. We are in control of it. And that is, talk about a pro tip. Speaking of pro tips, our whole topic today is, and I'm excited about this because we haven't done this yet on the show. You have 5 tips that you live by for how to be successful in sales. And I feel like it's funny because you just gave us like 7 of them between your introduction and what you just said. I'm like, I feel like this has been only tips, but we have a list of 5 tips that we're going to go through that are your brainchild. I can't wait to dive in. What is tip number 1?
Oh my goodness. Oh, great. Listen, listen, a mentor early on shared that a good ratio to kind of listen and speak is listen 90% of the time, speak, ask questions I'd say 10 to 15% of the time. Kind of allow your clients to share fully with you, understand their needs and challenges, learn from them and hone in on what they need. And by listening, you can better identify the type of pain they're in. And oftentimes you can literally hear the solution. So become an expert, know your market. Those are all things that we know. Listen, ask thoughtful, open-ended questions, and some favorite open-ended questions in case anyone is trying to like go where their go-to, right? What happens if this challenge doesn't get solved, addressed, fixed? What are the most important priorities to you at this moment? And why is that? What would you like to see improved? Who else should we involve in this conversation? What else can I do to help you finalize this decision? Those are all open-ended questions that allow that person, whether it's a client or a prospect, to really share what it is that they're thinking, how they're feeling, what the challenge is. If it doesn't get solved, what's going to happen? And then also that one question, my goodness, you've got to ask who else needs to be involved in this decision-making process. There's a committee of decision makers today on any buying that is going on. And so ask that question. So it's the listening and asking those open-ended questions that allow for people to share with you what it is that the struggles that they're going through and how they're trying to solve them and why they're trying to solve them.
It's so simple, right? It's so simple. And yet
it is.
Why do you think sales, and even I would go so far as to say client success professionals, why is this a hard thing to do? Because I feel like that's the right tip, but we have to keep saying that that's a tip because people don't do it. So what prevents people when they're in their process from listening the way that they should?
Yeah, I believe that people want to come in and solve the problem so quickly. They want to go in with all of their knowledge. This is what I know to be true. This is what the market says. This is the pain point that we know that research shows. Boom, boom, boom. This is how we can help. And you're like, whoa. So step back a moment. What is the problem? Don't make any assumptions. What is your challenge? How long have you been working on this? Who else is involved in it? What happens if it doesn't get solved? Is there budget set aside? Is this even happening in Q1? Is this happening this calendar year? How do you know this to be a challenge? Like, just ask some of those questions. But again, I believe that people lean into wanting to solve, wanting to go to solutions so quickly, and you miss so much of what is actually going on. Because many times in my career, 20 plus years in my career, you'll go in with one understanding and you have an assumption. Maybe you know the market really well. You think you understand their challenge. You'll go into that conversation without asking all of those questions to really confirm what it is that they're dealing with or the struggle that they're up against. Many times you will find that it's actually a different challenge. It's a different problem. Maybe what seems obvious, right? The obvious answer to what the obvious problem is, isn't actually the challenge they're trying to solve. They actually have to solve two challenges ahead of where your product or service comes into play. And even that conversation with them and getting them to answer those questions and hear it themselves can get you closer to understanding and trying to help them through the process. Again, they may be further away from your solution than they even know. So again, that listening piece. But it's likely that I believe that it's people want to help. They want a solution right away.
Well, and I think you're right that it's also the more knowledge and acumen and expertise that you gain by being in your field, if you don't have that critical skill where you're reminding yourself that you have to listen first and then apply your expertise, I think you jump to a conclusion thinking this person is like every other person and I know a lot. I'm the expert. I'm the person selling this. So I can't wait to jump in and tell you everything that I know. But this always makes me think of even doctors. Like, my mind works in a series of metaphors. It's a mess in here, but always in metaphors. And I remember when I was working at a prior company, one of the female managers on my team was really, really sick. And she was complaining about stomach pain. And I remember the entire week she kept being like, my stomach is really hurting. I went to my general doctor and they recommended me to like a gastro doctor. And she was on all different kinds of medications for 1 or 2 weeks until finally she got really, really ill. And she decided to go see another doctor to get a second opinion. When she was telling that doctor her symptoms, the doctor said, I actually don't think this is your stomach. I think you have a kidney infection. Something as simple as that. But it was a different doctor. She said the same thing. But the one doctor she knew was like, oh, it's stomach pain. It's this, it's that. Here's some medicine. Go take it. You're going to be fine. She wasn't improving. It wasn't until she went to somebody else. And it's funny because she was explaining this to me and she's like, this doctor like listened a lot more and they were asking a lot more questions. And I was telling them what I was currently going through. And after listening so much more than the doctor who knows me, they said, I think you're feeling the symptom here, but the problem is somewhere else. And she uncovered it and wound up saving her life because she wound up having like a double kidney infection it was really bad. But it just reminded me that sometimes the expertise blocks your ability to listen and be agile. So we have to keep reminding ourselves, I don't care how much you know, you have to start by listening with everybody, with all of your customers. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great story to tell because it does give a beautiful and heartbreaking example of why, with all of that expertise, it's really important, like you said, to listen and to ask good questions. Not everyone is the same. Not every challenge, even when you assume it, is the same. And you just need to start by listening and asking good questions.
Listen 90% of the time and don't let your own assumptions get in the way. What's number 2?
Exactly. Oh my goodness, buckle up and lean into your problem solving skills. We were just talking about it a little bit there. I mean, your curiosity and build your resiliency, because those are 2 characteristics that are going to be critical to your success throughout your sales career. You're going to hear no far more than you're going to hear yes. And most things don't go your way or aren't going to go your way, right? It has to do with that ratio of no to yes. And that's okay. It's how you handle those moments that matter. And so your resiliency will soon show itself to be one of your superpowers. And you have to really acknowledge it and create and acknowledge, right? Acknowledge that it's a superpower. And in part of that, right, the buckle up and leaning into your problem solving skills, asking those good questions, as we were talking about, listening, leaving that person smarter than when you met them. So it all kind of pulls together, the curiosity, building your resiliency, and those things will lead to always leaving the person smarter than when you met them.
That's only number 2. That's not like 2, 3, 4, and 5.
That's only number 2. Okay. I got to put it into one. I mean, those are tips that if you don't have curiosity and resiliency, and number 3 is don't take things personally. So you're going to face rejection often. It's rarely about you. It's generally about timing, internal politics, budget, a committee of decision makers, as we've talked about. The list goes on, and you've got to identify and solve those problems to drive successful outcomes. Do not take things personally. It is the majority of the time, it is not about you. And you just need to help peel back the onion, peel back the layer as to what it is that they're really challenged by and what's going on. And many times help problem solve for them, but don't take things personally.
These 2, I think number 2 and 3 are a good 1-2 punch, because number 2, you also said something that I think is an amazing tip while you were explaining number 2, which is getting used to no, right? Like as a salesperson, we have to go against our biology. And like our biology is, I don't like hearing no, I don't like being wrong. And we have to go against our biology to say part of the job is hearing no. And I have to get used to that. And I have to get through a certain number of no's before I get to a yes. And that like bleeds into almost number 3, which is don't take it personally. It's like number 2 is like, get curious, don't get furious. And then step 3 is like, don't take it personally. Now, I have a question for you around number 3, because this is another one like number 1. It's like a secret, sounds simple, and then it's not simple, where it's like, don't take it personally. But if you are doing your process and you are sharing your expertise, and as a sales rep, you are doing everything that you can do, and at the end of the day, you don't make the sale and you're not hitting your number, it's really hard not to look internal and say, clearly it must be me. And your mind goes to all different kinds of places. So how do you as a salesperson or even a leader stay on track and not go personal when things are just not going your way?
Yeah. So between 2 and 3, someone saying no and not taking it personally, I'll stick with don't take it personally. You have to look and see what the conversation entailed, right? Was it how you approached it? So you don't have to take it personally. Like, I am not a good salesperson. I did not represent well. But you do have to take a moment to just kind of reassess and say, what's going on? Oh, it's the timing. Okay, let's think about their timing. It's budget. Okay, let me keep that in mind, not only for future conversations with this particular person or company, but for other conversations with companies who are trying to solve the same problem. Gosh, did I just identify that there's a budget cycle here? That Q2 is not going to be a good time to have this conversation. It really needs to happen in Q4 because Q2 is when this particular product always has to take effect. I'm just making up numbers, but scenarios, but you get the idea there. Is it a budget problem? Do I need to really think through that committee of decision makers? Is there a committee involved that I'm not aware of? So maybe I'm hearing no, and I'm not taking it personally because it's not Jennifer Ives they're saying no to, but maybe they're saying no to the process. Maybe they're saying no because the person doesn't have budget authority, and I, Jennifer Ives, need to help them uncover that. Is there someone else that should, is part of this decision-making process? Is there someone else that should be around the table having this conversation with us? Is there someone on your team, Jane Smith, who would be of help to solving this problem internal to your company? Those are the kinds of questions that you want to ask yourself. And when I mean don't take it personally, really don't take it as Jennifer Ives. This is a no for Jennifer Ives. They did not like Jennifer Ives. It's what is it that they're really struggling with? Is it that it's not a product that could help them? Okay, then I need to do a better job understanding who my target audience is. Or is it some of the other things that we talked through earlier? Is it a committee? Is it timing? Is it budget? Is it these other things? And then apply that knowledge to your next call, to your next round of prospects that you're working with and or clients that you're working with.
Yes, this is really key advice also for founders who are still in that stage where they're doing a founder-led sale and they're selling their own product. Because I think sales reps who really take ownership of the product that they're selling will see this a lot, right? Where it starts to feel personal because they're so invested, but even more so when it's a really early stage company. You get a founder selling your own product because it's almost like that's your child, that's your baby, that's the product that you developed. And when someone says no to your product as a founder, it feels pretty personal. And I think that can destroy the morale of a lot of founders really, really fast, is hearing no so often and this urge to take it personally. And so the reminder of trying to remove that, I think, especially for founders, is big.
Yes. And I've worked with a number of emerging technology companies that are founder-led, and it really is, it can feel like someone just called your baby ugly. And many times that's not what they're saying. They're really saying, hey, a piece of this is really helpful. Or the timing of this is wonderful. And those are Q4 decisions we make. And we're in Q1, so we can't make that decision right now. This is where that sales leader, I know we're talking about founders. This is where that sales leader and that founder can really hear the feedback from those that they are speaking with and start potentially applying it to the product or applying it to the timing of the product roadmap. I mean, there's such rich information that comes through in conversations, even when it's a no. Many times we get more information about a sales process, about the product when we do hear no. It's a time of reflection.
Yes. And that brings me back to number 2 around curiosity, because early on, I mean, we don't want to ever call anyone's baby ugly, but maybe your baby's wearing an ugly outfit and you need somebody to tell you that so that you can fix it, And so I think on the flip side of that, there's taking it personally, but then there's also, if you're hearing feedback that early about something that may be broken or might not be working, or maybe you're not working with the right ICP, like there could be feedback there that if you remove yourself from it, you can actually impact the product for better so that it can scale. So I think number 3, again, it feels really simple, but then when you start to apply it in different scenarios, you realize how impactful it can be to keep these simple things in mind.
Yeah, agree. And number 4, just to jump ahead, because we're talking about no and hearing no. Get to know early, like literally identify and uncover no early. There's nothing worse in a sales process where you haven't asked the right questions or you're allowing conversations to go on and on and on. And this is when there really is maybe the product market fit isn't correct, or this doesn't have to do with maybe you needed some additional folks in the conversation. This just is not a good match. Get to know early. As a sales rep, I always advise and mentor and kind of talk sales rep through this get to know early. It just, again, I'll bring up a mentor. It was a wonderful mentor who taught me early in my career, because once you've identified no, you can then, one, take them out of your pipeline and start working on and identifying those who do need your services or do need your help. But you can provide that person with guidance. And again, always leave them smarter than when you met the person or the company. And you can move forward versus spending time on a problem, again, that doesn't require your service or your product. So be thoughtful, share advice, keep in touch, always grow your network. It's a tip within a tip. Always grow your network, because they just may need you in the future, and or you may need them in the future. So build your network, see it as an opportunity for that, but move on, get to know early and move on so that you can put your product or service in front of those who really do need those solutions.
Well, you hit on a key part of speaking in terms of no also, which is get to the true no early. Because a lot of times we know when you're selling, you're going to hear no a lot, but it may not be a real no. And so I feel like sales reps need to be able to identify, when is it a no because it is not a fit, it is not the right time, they do not have the budget, versus when is it a no because I'm selling somebody something and it's uncomfortable and people don't want to talk to sales reps. So I think what you're talking about that is great is find a process to identify a true no versus I can sell my way out of this no, or I can provide value enough to get out of this no, or I can do discovery enough to sort of pivot that. And there's usually scalable, identifiable metrics you can get to find the true no. But if you never talk about it, then everyone's guessing.
Oh, that's such a good point. And I'm going to borrow that, if it's all right with you. Get to true no early. I'm going to use that from here on out, because that is exactly what you're trying to identify. So thank you, Christina, for that clarifying, that popping that word in there. Get to true no early.
Yeah. I mean, that I just repackaged what you said. So I gave you your own gift. I re-gifted you your own idea.
You did. Thank you. I love it. You made it better.
Here. Do you want a rice cooker? The same one you gave to me? Here you go. What's number 5? Very excited.
Number 5, I know I have throughout our conversation, I've mentioned mentors. Mentors are so important. Yes. Find a mentor early in your career. They can help accelerate your knowledge, your growth path, and they can guide you in honest and true, and to use the word, true ways. They can challenge you to take calculated risks, and they can encourage you to try harder things while they're also supporting you kind of every step of the way. I've always found mentors to have counsel that can be essential, and we talked about it a little bit today, that can be essential at certain decision points throughout someone's professional life, personal life too, and how it affects your personal life, but definitely professional life. I did not realize the power of mentorship until mid-career. And ever since then, I continue to look for mentors. Even now, 20 plus years, 25 years into my career, I identify new mentors for me fairly regularly, and I create those relationships. I also proactively, I believe in paving the way forward, especially for women in technology, women in sales, women in commercial growth. So I will proactively offer to be someone's mentor when I meet them. I could meet someone one time at a conference and they ask me an interesting question, and then it allows me to have a little bit of time with them. And I will say, do you have a mentor? Would you like a mentor? Do you know of mentoring organizations? Here are 2 that I think highly of. Again, I believe really strongly in women paving the way forward for other women in their careers and in their personal lives as well. So mentorship, it is find a mentor, and mentoring does not stop. When you hit year 15 or year 20, as I mentioned, I 25 years into my career, and I just found a new mentor last week, and we just started a great relationship. And I asked her, and I asked point blank, would you like to be my mentor? Would you mind mentoring me in kind of these 3 areas or this one area? If you can be specific, sometimes you're not sure. Sometimes it's just, you've had a successful career in sales. If someone's 2, 5, 7 years into their career, you've had a successful career, Jennifer. Could I meet with you? Could I buy you coffee? Or could we, jump on a Zoom a couple times a year for me to run some ideas by you? It's really that easy. It's not, many times I think, especially early mid-career, folks are a little more timid to ask for mentors, and you don't need to. Every woman that I have met in my career who I've spoken with about mentorship has always been incredibly gracious and very, very pleased to help the next generation and be there to help pull that next generation forward.
I mean, that was incredible advice. I often think that people believe that they have to hit a certain point in their career or a certain level to either qualify themselves for a mentor or, like you said, to qualify out of needing a mentor. Like, I've achieved the top. I no longer need the mentorship. And I love that you coming on the show, dropping this knowledge, less than a week ago, you're sitting there and you're finding new mentors for you. That's that learning mentality that I think the best tech executives in the world, I think the most effective human beings in the world are always looking for opportunities to be better. And you never hit the peak, right? It's always, I can do better. I can learn more. I can change. I think that's rooted in successful people. And speaking of amazing 5 tips, this feels like a perfect time for me to ask you 5 more questions.
And
a rapid reveal.
Oh my goodness. I love it. All right. Here we go. What are they?
Here we go. All right. 5 questions, 60 seconds or less to answer each of them. And those of you who are not familiar with the show, in this section, this is where we're going to get to know a little bit more about Jennifer. I'm going to ask her some fun stuff, maybe some weird stuff, and we're going to dive in. So, number 1, this is softball. I always like to start with a softball, hopefully.
Ease me into it.
Ease you into it and then hit you with it. No. Who has been the most impactful person in your adult life? You're the perfect person to ask this because you're always looking for amazing people. So who has been the most impactful person in your adult life?
Oh my gosh. All right. So, my mom and dad were, and maybe people have answered it this way in the past, I'm not sure. My mom and dad were the most impactful people in my childhood as well as my adult life. I lost my dad very suddenly in my early 20s, and I just lost my mom a year and a half ago. And those losses were of impactful people, and what happened was impactful. It taught me very quickly in my early 20s, it taught me very quickly that life is short. And it taught me life is short, and it also put into perspective very quickly those things that are important to me. There, unfortunately, is nothing like losing someone you love or losing someone that means a great deal to you that will very quickly put into order those things that are important to you. And it will happen. It will become very crystal clear in those moments. And so those are 2 really impactful people to me. And I would say that my family, I have a wife and I have a husband and 2 children. I am a wife, and they are incredibly impactful to me because they too help me prioritize and many times reprioritize what is important to me, both personally and professionally. And so I hope I didn't answer in a softball way, but those are impactful moments as well as impactful people. And they happen to be in my family. They happen to be part of my family.
I mean, you sure showed me. That was not a softball answer. That was a beautiful answer. I'm so sorry to hear about the recent loss. And even I'm a firm believer as a parent myself, you're never ready to lose those people. And I almost feel like in your early 20s, you're robbed because your entire childhood, you can't wait to show your parents the adult that you've become. I remember when I was younger, just wanting so badly to be like, I can't wait till my mom and I can share a glass of wine together and just talk about like, you're an adult, I'm an adult. And when you're robbed of that opportunity, that's hard. So I'm sure that both of them, wherever they are, if you believe that, I think it's pretty incredible the impact they had on you, and they did a really good job. So.
Yeah. Thank you. I think they did a really good job as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Let's break it to number 2. What is an irrational fear of yours?
An irrational fear. Oh my goodness. So I have a few, but I'm going to go with the one that I've had the longest, right, since childhood. And it is the most irrational. I don't know what bad thing could happen, but tight spaces. I am a claustrophobic. I have claustrophobia. And I'm not so much, it's not so much when I get into an elevator with 7 other people. That's not when it hits. It hits when I'm sitting in potentially like in a It can hit when I'm in an airplane and it's crowded and the seats are closed. It can hit a few times in my life. It's hit when I've been in a theater and I've been kind of in an older theater, especially on Broadway. If you go back up in those theaters, the roof kind of curves around and you can feel, and I mean, now that I'm an adult, I just try to talk myself through it a little bit, but tight spaces, I'll go with that irrational fear. There's really nothing that can happen. There's nothing that can happen. That's why I believe it's irrational, but man, get me in a tight space and I got to do some yoga breaths, some deep yoga breathing.
Yeah, I could get down with that. That one makes sense to me. All right, number 3. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, a mentor who tapped me on the shoulder for one of those we talked about earlier. If not you, then who? When you think about something and you wonder if it's the right decision, or you are thinking, like, ask yourself, if not you, then who? It's a very simple question, and it will highlight very quickly the answer to what it is that you're trying to decide.
Oh, that's a good one. I like it. All right, number 4. What is a pet peeve of yours?
Don't we all have a few? I'm going to go with, I haven't had to experience this in a while because of COVID, and we haven't, we the collective, we with the capital W, haven't been in office buildings that often lately. But for many, many years, I worked every day in an office building, and my pet peeve was when people would get on the elevator and they would press one floor up and they would take the elevator one floor, and it used to drive me crazy. And that's just not, that's like, since I first started working, it would drive me crazy to say, why aren't you just walking one flight of steps? One flight. But that's a little pet peeve of mine that to this day, even with COVID,
still gets you.
It still gets me. Walk the flight. It's
Take
not
the
that
stairs.
hard.
It's 6 stairs. Take them. Go up the stairs if you are willing and able. Yes.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes, exactly.
Number 5. What is one life skill that you're always looking to improve?
This gets me all the time. And listen, with so much information coming at you all at once these days, text, Slack, email, etc., I'm always consistently working on time management in an era that doesn't naturally allow for it. So time management is something that I am routinely working on. And we live in a world that doesn't really truly allow for time management anymore. You have to be really good at it. You have to hone that skill often. You cannot let it slip. You cannot let that slide.
100%. I think I'm going to be working on that forever. Like everybody should, right? Like, cause we're never going to get that right. It's like the one thing that doesn't change is how much time we have, and yet we just can't nail it. But that being said, Jennifer, this was an incredible conversation, and we packed so many insights into such a small amount of time. And I imagine there are folks who are going to want to get to know you and connect with you and maybe work with you or follow you to wherever your next adventure takes you. So how can people who are listening that want to connect with you, where do they go to find you?
Oh my gosh, the very best place to find me is on LinkedIn. You can find me at Jennifer Ives, and please feel free to link in with me. That's the very best place to find me. Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, Jennifer, thank you. Yeah, thank you for being an incredible guest on Taking the Lead. And to all of my wonderful listeners, we will see you again next time.
Yeah, it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Taking the Lead. If you're looking for more inspiring stories from women leaders in B2B tech, then visit us at motionagency.io/takingthelead.